I'm going to do a video for you today. I'm going to talk about cards or tickets sometimes, and I'm going to talk about how they're formatted and put into Jira and Azure Boards, and help you to understand some of the naming conventions of cards. Really going through as if you're using these systems for the first time, or maybe you've used one of the two systems. You've used Jira, and now you're going to use Azure Boards. The reason why software has become really popular in these areas is there's a lot of features within the software that allow work to be done a lot easier, but really the principles are the same as if you had a physical board up on the wall. So my name is Alex Crossley. I'm going to put these all on YouTube and on my website, and you can happily go and look those. It's probably about a 10-minute conversation. Now, what I'm really targeting this discussion at is people who are just using these systems for the first time. But I'm not going to turn it into a training session. But what I'm imagining you're watching this video for is because you've been asked to put your tickets into Jira, or you've been asked to put your tickets into Azure Boards. I'm going to interchange the word tickets, work items, and cards. They're all things that need to be done. And I always think of a job card. If you've ever worked in manual labour, you would turn up to the office or the site first thing in the morning. You'd pick your job card off on the board and it'd tell you where you're working that day, for instance. So I worked on a landscaping company, and that's how we did it. Sometimes you pick two job cards up because you've got two jobs that day, and then you take your team out. Well, Jira and Azure Boards work on a card system. Now, sometimes you might want to put those cards into a folder, and that folder would contain all of those cards for that big job. And that's what these systems allow you to do. And the type of card that you pick up is either a folder type card or an individual card, or maybe it's a collection of cards within the folder. And those are all given different names. I'm going to walk through that with you now and show you how it looks in each of the two systems. So let's start with a big folder. Let's start with a big folder now. In Jira, that's called an epic. And they're that color, purple. And you put them into the system, call them an epic. And what you can then do into that epic is you can put items inside that called stories. So the epic might be something, I'm going back to my landscaping, we're landscaping this entire industrial estate, and the two user stories are for building 1 and building 2. That might be the user stories. But they're work that can be done in a time box amount of time. And then into there, you'd have, we'd have tasks. So there's 3 tiers there. We've got the big thing, the big outcome that we're trying to achieve that can't be done in a day, which is a time box if you're working landscaping, or can't be done in a week, or can't be done in a sprint, but it's the big outcome. And then underneath that, stories, a customer outcome that can be delivered within a time box, and underneath that's the activity, the tasks. And the colors there are what you've got in Jira. So if I show you Jira, this is Jira, and we have this item down the side. Jira and ADO and Azure Boards look very similar, but I'll just give you an idea what you're looking at here. We've got this navigation down the side. I'm going to get rid of that because I don't want to see that. But what we're looking at here are the big things, the epics, first box. Into stats, there are 2 stories. And if I click on one of these stories, it gives me the definition of what that story is. This is the job card, and there's a task to be done there. And that's how Jira works, really straightforward. And we create these cards. So if you're the leader in the team, or the team members create these cards. And if you're in charge of the entire job, the epic, then you'd be creating that card. If you're in charge of particular parts of that, you'd be creating and managing the stories. And if you're just working on tasks, then you'd be creating tasks. So that's Jira. That's how Jira works. Now let's have a look at Azure Boards, and it's going to look and feel very similar. So in Azure Boards, I'm starting with the same purple thing. Now that's called a feature in Azure Boards. It's not called epics, but the top thing, the thing that's bigger than a time box, bigger than a sprint, is called a feature. Into that feature go stories, sometimes called PBIs, product backlog increments, or product backlog items. But really, the feature is the product backlog. But the backlog of things to do is the purple things. And into there go these blue things. Now they are a different color in Azure Boards. We don't expect Microsoft and LSE to line those up. It's a different color. And into there go tasks. And again, 3 tiers. Almost exactly the same as Jira. They're both based off the same principle that we have something to do that's big, that's delivering value, purple. We want to time box it and deliver it in increments, stories. And then to deliver those stories, we have tasks, we have activities. 3 tiers. So looking at Azure Boards, to me it looks very similar to Jira, but if you're new to both of them or new to one of them, it looks quite different maybe. Again, we've got navigation down the side, which I'm going to hide because we don't need to see that, so I'll move that to the side. And in here, we have features at the top, and instead of going all around, we're going to go below that is stories, and below that is tasks. And if I wanted to see the detail of any of these cards, I'd have to click on them to see them. It doesn't come up down the side. With Jira, we have the sprint bar at the top. This one's at the side. They're very, very similar tools. I'm not going to talk about sprints and all that sort of stuff. I'm talking about cards today. Cards or tickets or work items, they're all called the same. So what you might be asked to do is go put your activity into Jira/Azure Boards, and you have to ask, well, which story am I contributing to? Or we've got this big piece of work, this big piece of value that needs to be delivered. What are you creating? You're creating a feature. What are we going to do in the next time box? What are we doing next week? What are we doing next sprint? Well, we're going to work on that piece of value, so I will create the outcome that I'm going to achieve that sprint as a story. And that's the same in the two systems. So really, if I just put the two side by side, I'll break this down and really summarize it for you. So bigger than a sprint, something that's delivering value, is a purple item in both systems. In Jira, it's called a epic, and in Azure Boards, it's called a feature. Try not to get too stuck on the name. If you go Scrum language, I'll get on to why Scrum is safe. I'm going to talk about it in a second. The next tier below, things that fit inside that big thing, are stories. They're time boxed. Different colors in each one, but they're both called stories. They might be called product backlog items in Azure Boards, but you can also have stories. Oops, I beg your pardon. Oops, just going back a couple. And then finally, the day-to-day activities, the tasks, which is kind of optional in the teams I've been in, you can put in there as tasks as well. The actual activity is going to be done. Okay. Now, let's have a look at those side by side. So here are the two systems side by side. Same screenshots you had a minute ago. The epic is here. The feature is here. Those two are the same kind of card, same kind of ticket, same kind of work item. Underneath we have stories. And then underneath that we have tasks. So to see the story down here, you have to come over here and see the task. There it's there. You could also click on the card of the Azure Board one and see it. I did mention earlier the sprint board is here on this, the sprint board is here on this. They're just two different ways, two different user interfaces. Okay. So there's the features. Should have just used these boxes. There's the stories. There's the tasks. So what is the difference? Well, there aren't many. So really, naming convention is different. So we have feature or epic at the top level. And the colors are different. You may have a difference between these two names as well. But as long as you're aligning with the size and the intention of your cards, your work items, your tickets, and you don't start trying to put tasks in at a feature size, then you're going to be able to use the system just fine. Okay, so this is the question that I always get asked, which is best, Jira or Azure Boards? Well, it's probably a preference thing from a user interface point of view. It's like asking Holden or Ford, who do you prefer? Well, it's what you prefer. It's just a matter of taste. But if you were actually looking to transport heavy materials, and you were saying Ford or Holden, well, that's not the question. Well, that's not the question. Do you want a truck or a car? And really, in this relationship, your Azure Boards is more of a truck. It's more built for enterprise, as in where Jira is built and has been very good in startups and Scrum framework type teams. Very good, very good. Jira, Azure Boards is more made for scaled organizations. So I'm just going to show you that a little bit why, but I'm not going to go into too much because I've got videos on that. Oops. My magic mouse keeps flicking through. So this was Azure Boards, if you remember. Now, if you were working at scale, what you'd find is happening is you'd have many teams. That's what working at scale means. Now, all of these teams, and there is interactions between these teams. If you're working in a big organization, you're going to have teams that look after products and teams that look after services, and you're going to have teams that look after particular platforms. So these teams have to work together at scale. So they can't be distinct like this. There's nothing really joining these guys up. So what we do, and this is part of the SAFE framework, because these might be running Scrum teams. Let's be honest, we can talk Agile and say, oh, there's more different ways of running Agile. There totally is for Kanban, Scrum. There's loads of different elements to it. But we're talking Scrum here. These are Scrum teams. If you're looking at scale Agile, you might be looking at scale SAFE. This is what you start to bring to it. You start to say, well, actually, we're going to wrap our features, those top level things, into something else that's called an orange item, which in Azure Boards is called the epic. And it's the epic that's shared across more than one team. Even the features can actually technically be shared across more than one team. So the system in Azure Boards allows you to do that. And then what it also allows you to do is to extend it even further and say, well, actually, all of that work belongs to a project which is funded in a particular way. So in Azure Boards, you have more tiers above. You still have the 3 tiers at the bottom, so teams can still work as tiers, as the way they do, in the same way as Jira. But what Azure Boards offers is a scaled approach where you can do this. So that really is the difference between the two. So what you've got in Azure Boards, in the implementations that I've at least worked in and I've done this 3 or 4 times in 3 or 4 different organizations, we have that scale at the top. So we have the enterprise project, which is the green area, and into that we have these incremental releases. I beg your pardon, that should be orange, not blue there. That one there should be orange. I'll have to change that for my next time I use this presentation. So the orange ones are the big incremental releases. Okay, normally quarterly done. For BI planning, for safe, it'll be quarterly planned. So that's the video. So I put these on my website, but feel free to check that out. I've got videos about how to use Azure Boards a lot more than I do Jira, but I wanted to do this one to compare the two. So if you're a Jira user, you're also understanding the need to think about cards and where you're putting the cards and how they relate to the Azure Boards if you're using Azure Boards, and vice versa. Hope you enjoyed the video. Take care, look after yourself.